Yes, how are we doing, Spurs fans? We are back in the Champions League, and we have just seen the draw unfold for us. Thank God that Kaka and Zlatan were able to draw our ball maybe a bit earlier than the others, because we'd probably still be waiting who all our opponents are, because they really have milked that Champions League stream there. And we are going to bring them up on screen for you guys, and we're going to get an initial chat about, of course, our Champions League opponents, and then we'll move on into some of these Xavi Simons rumors, whether we're going to get crushed again and have our hopes and our dreams of signing some type of marquee signing be crushed again. And then we have some bits and other pieces that we will get to. Let me just zoom in on this to make it a little bit easier on our eyes here. But thank you for joining us tonight, everyone. Please smash the like button while you're in here, and do get ready for that Champions League fever and get ready for that Champions League theme song. It's been far too long since we've been singing it as Spurs fans. In terms of the opponents that we will have, of course, the calendar and the schedule of them will be decided, I think, around Saturday. That's what Billy was telling me in the back end. We have Dortmund at home, PSG away, Villarreal in Spain at home. But we also have Frankfurt, a meeting with them. Once again, 2 revenge games with PSG and with Frankfurt. Slavia Prague will be playing them at home. Bodo Glimt away. We'll see how that Arctic Circle trip goes for us. FC Copenhagen, of course, maybe a team that Thomas Frank wants to get one over. And then the likes of AS Monaco reuniting with Eric Dyer. Maybe we could score 5 or 6 past him. But let's get straight into it here, everybody. Like I said, do get into the comments. If you want to stop the show at any point, you're welcome to throw in a super chat, because we'll get to it straight away and we'll bring up your comments on screen to the best of our ability throughout the show. Thanks for joining us. We have Billy as well as Soren in the house. Let's get straight into it. First question is, maybe we'll go to you on this one, Soren, the most difficult opponent. What do you think? Which is the one that you're maybe most fearful of, and which one are maybe most excited, let's say, about playing?
I always look forward to the Borussia one, the Dortmund. I mean, it'd have been nice to have played there. Paris, we know that's not going to be an easy one. It's not the nicest place to have to travel to have a game, but be interesting to go back to Bodo. Our friend Sean's gonna go and see his friend again. I'm sure he'll be looking forward to. He'll already be on the text into Helga. But that will be an interesting one to see what time or when we play them, as to whether we go when it's cold or a bit warmer again. But it would have been nice to have had them at home and gone away to Copenhagen maybe. But yeah, I think it's a good draw. We should certainly be coming out of that group, and yeah, it's time to get excited again, lads. And shall we make a prediction? We're going to win the Champions League already. Come on.
This is already the pathway, Soren. The happy clapping juice is already flowing through him at the minute. Soren, he's got the Champions League fever. Hopefully also Helga has a few sisters for us, with Shawnee taking up one of them. But to you, Billy, what game are you maybe most fearful of? Is it obvious PSG away, or are there any other maybe slippery fixtures?
I feel like PSG away is kind of like a free hit in some ways. I don't think anyone will be expecting us to go there and win. I know obviously we had a great performance against them in the Super Cup. And we're lucky the way that the draw is favoured out or worked out. It's not really going to be a clincher for us whether we go and get a result of PSG. So it's literally the toughest possible draw we could have got in that specific game. But in terms of the overall draw, I don't think it's really a big deal. So I think maybe I would look to Frankfurt away as maybe somewhere we might. I know we did it in the Europa League, but again, it's not an easiest place to go, as Europa League proved. Monaco, a bit of an unproven quantity, I think. I kind of follow them now and then in the French league. They're always sort of up and down. I think they had an all right season last season. Obviously, they've got Dyer. They've got Akliouche as well, a player that we've been linked with who's really good. But I think overall, I'm really, really pleased with the draw. But I would maybe say of the away fixtures, probably Frankfurt is the trickiest one there, not including PSG. That goes without saying.
I mean, for me, Dave, I think actually the Bodo Glimt game might actually be the banana peel, might be the slippery one, because I just feel like teams seem to suffer there when they have to go there in the dead of winter into the Arctic Circle. There's, 20 feet of snow on the ground, just not really a nice place to go to. It's actually a much longer trip than people also might remember as well. Hard to get your away fans to travel with you. So I actually think that might be a tricky one for us. But, Billy's saying PSG might just be a free hit, and Frankfurt might actually be the tough game, actually.
Yeah, look, don't get me wrong. I mean, Bodo Glimt is a banana peel, but at the end of the day, it's only a banana peel if you don't turn up with the right attitude. That's where you get cold in them games. If you're turned up and you're not willing to go and do the hard yards, you're being outworked, you're being outfought, and you don't do the basics. That's where you get caught in the games. If we turn up with the right attitude, it should be an easy enough game. Look, to be honest with you, I think PSG is the toughest test, but again, we already played them in the Super Cup. We didn't look too bad against them. On another night, maybe we could take something from that game. I'm delighted that the Dortmund game is at home. That makes that one a little bit more in our favor. But, there's a lot of familiarity in this draw. We've played PSG, we played Frankfurt last year, we played Bodo Glimt last year. So we know what we're in for. And then you look at likes of Copenhagen, Slavia Prague, the likes of Monaco. I do think we should win them. Billy said it. And Villarreal, I think Villarreal will be a bit of a tricky one. Them Spanish teams, I don't like coming up against them. They usually make themselves very hard to beat. And usually they do catch you on the counter.
Yeah.
That's I would be looking at where I think a bit dodgy, but relatively, I think the Champions League draw has been kind to me. If you would have asked me earlier on today, what I would have, teams that I would have wanted out of each pot. Well, I've got the majority of them, to be quite frank with you. And I think Billy T said it before we went live. I think looking at this draw, injuries permitting, of course. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't get a top 8 finish out of this.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it seems like. I'm getting the vibes from you guys. Seems like everybody's been pretty relieved by what we've drawn here. Now, maybe back to you, Billy. What's the game that you see us putting 4, 5, 6 past a team? What's the game that you're licking your lips about that you think we'll have a fun night out?
Obviously, famous last words for these, but you'd look at Slavia Prague and Copenhagen at home as two pretty decent draws, I think. Chelsea played Copenhagen in the Conference League last year, didn't they? I think in the semi-finals or the quarterfinals, and beat them. I guess when you're playing at this level, there's no easy games as such, but getting those 2 games at home, I think, is pretty favourable for us. So I'd look at them too for sure. I think our 4 home fixtures are all very winnable, I would say. Other than Dortmund is a bit of a have potential to be maybe a tricky one. I remember they beat us at home a few years ago when we had Poch and Aubameyang, but other than that, we've had a really, really good record against Dortmund. So, but I think the 4 home fixtures are really kind.
And then to you, Soren, my fellow happy clapper, which one are we putting 4, 5, 6 past?
It's got to be Paris Saint-Germain, hasn't it? I mean, it's a walkover. I mean, the interesting thing is, I'm not sure whether it's Ali Gold that's posted it, but there was some comments last year about when we played Bodo and Frankfurt and got to the final and we'd played nobody, and we're not going to play those type of teams in the Champions League. And here we are, we're playing Bodo and Frankfurt in the Champions League. Look, none of those, we're not going to put 4 or 5, 6 goals past anybody. It doesn't happen in the Champions League, and hopefully nobody's going to put that past us neither. I think Billy's just summed it up. They're the games that we should be looking at. Copenhagen, things like that. They're going to be the good games. But in theory, you've got no mugs in the Champions League. If you put in 4, 5, 6 goals past somebody, then in theory they shouldn't be in the Champions League. That's the way I look at it, even on a good night. But yeah, I mean, if we draw Bodo at the right time of year, we should be putting a few past them, but I'd be surprised if it's 5 or 6.
Do you know what? I sort of disagree here. I think there is an opportunity to beat the likes of Slavia or Copenhagen at home, by 4 or 5 goals, just by the way we played. Because last year in Europe under Postecoglou, we relied a lot on, intricate play, build-up play, stuff like that. With Thomas Frank, he mixes up the styles. And I think that'll be very unpredictable against Europe. But you already seen our team against PSG. We have the ability to go long, put everything into the box. It was men against boys against PSG when the ball was going into the box. The height of our team compared to Tim, and I do think under Thomas Frank we have a lot more different avenues to go rather than just the same goal every time that we try to repeat under Postecoglou, which I think therefore does give us a chance. I think Bodo Glimt you can beat up from set pieces. Copenhagen, Slavia Prague, we should get joy against PSG Dortmund from set pieces. So for me, I do think there's a couple of fixtures there where we could easily put 3 or 4 by them on a good night.
I do feel like the Slavia Prague, might be I don't know, just that guy, if I remember, I don't remember his name, but he's like a intimidating tracksuit type of manager. He's almost like the Czech version of like a Sean Dyche or something with a mean look about him. And I remember they seem to give teams occasionally some tougher games than you might expect. For some reason, I feel like Copenhagen and Monaco are giving me the vibes of the teams that we might absolutely turn over, especially if Eric Dyer is starting in the defense for Monaco. I have a lot of confidence that we can cause him some problems.
Chelsea beat them 1-0 at home last season and 2-1 away. Copenhagen, but that was quite deep in the draw. That was in the that was in the knockout. So yeah, I doubt Chelsea would have gone full strength for that though. Anyway, that's also. But
just put a complaint in here, Jack. I'm not having Dave happy clapping over me. He's not right. He can't be more positive than me, so we're spanking them all 6-0. Sorry.
Yeah, Dave's thinking, might be getting 27 points is what Dave is probably thinking at this point. It's going to be undefeated with clean sheets all around as well.
Yeah, Dave's going for a point per goal.
And just two more questions on this Champions League, vibes that we're getting right now. Who do you think is going to be our best player in the Champions League? Who's going to be the guy that might step up on these big nights, Tuesday, Wednesday? Go to you on this one, Dave.
We need to step up. Look, ideally, we're going to need team performances this season. I still don't think we're a great team of individuals, but what Thomas Frank has done is made us a solid team on the football pitches, and everybody puts in a performance. Look, you're going to need some big nights from Vicario against the likes of your PSGs, your Dortmunds and stuff like that. You're going to need big nights from Romero, Van de Ven, Porro and Spence, but ultimately, I think you're looking at maybe the likes of Mohamed Kudus, in terms of going forward, getting on the ball. We've already seen PSG couldn't handle him, Burnley couldn't handle him, and Man City couldn't handle him. He is the guy that we've signed to have that X factor. Last year we were very dull going forward. A lot of the four players all sort of just doing the same thing. They're all very similar, whereas Mohamed Kudus is the one that's different. He has that X factor, and you can play him through the middle, you can play him through the right, and he's still going to affect the game, and I can't wait to see him, rip some teams up apart in this Champions League. I'm sure he's going to be hungry for this campaign. So for me, he would be my go-to guy in these nights, especially if you're coming up against likes of Bodo Glimt, Slavia, Copenhagen. They're going to sit 11 men behind the ball. They're going to try and make it difficult for Tottenham. He's the sort of guy that can be the difference maker, getting on the ball, taking them out of the game, pulling people towards him, creating space for others. So for me, he's the guy that I'm looking at this season.
And to you, Billy, who do you think is going to be maybe the player of the season in the Champions League for us? Who are you getting vibes from?
Well, my initial answer would be one that we haven't signed yet, because I'm hoping to bring a couple of big names in before the end of the window, so I'm sure we're going to talk about very, very, very soon. But my other guy would be Richarlison. I think he's a pretty good record in the Champions League. When we got there, he scored those 2 goals against Marseille. And I think he's just a bit of a handful for set pieces and things. So I'm going to go for Richarlison. I think he'll take to the task well, and it'll be interesting to see when the Champions League fixtures come around. In particular, of the strikers, like who gets the nod in the Champions League, who gets the nod in the Premier League, because I'm sure they will rotate with each other. But I back Richarlison to score a few goals in the Champions League this season, the way that he started.
Yeah, Sebastian's even saying that Richie header against Marseille is still cold to this day. Soren, who you getting the vibes from in the Champions League? Who's putting them in the net? Who's just going to be stepping up consistently on these big nights?
Right, I'm going to go totally opposite to the lads. As much as I agree with them, I think we're going to have a big unsung hero, and it's going to be Paulinho. I think he's going to have a massive Champions League. As long as he stays fit, he's going to be one of those players that we don't necessarily give him man of the match, but I think he's going to be so important to this season, and he's my choice. But sort of very close with him, I do think the Romero Van de Ven partnership as well. If we keep that sort of little triangle, Van de Ven, Romero, Paulinho, that's what's going to do as well in the Champions League. That's the bone for me. And as much as you see, the attacking players being very important, as long as we're not conceding many goals, we've got every chance of winning more matches. So them 3 for me are the big important things.
Jack, can I just take in this comment just quickly from gamers?
Feel free.
Smurf as well. He says you won't play sides like Eintracht Frankfurt and Bodo Glimt in the Champions League. That was a line used to diminish our achievement in the Europa League last season. So it just goes to show that it's a bit of a bullshit line to start putting respect on Tottenham's Europa League run.
Yeah. And what's also funny too is even Karabakh have made
Karabakh are in there as well.
So all the teams,
exactly.
I think us at Alkmaar weren't too far away as well. So it did show that maybe it wasn't that. Or it was a pretty difficult run that we were able to make. We only have one more question on the Champions League, but just to give my quick prediction, I think Dave will like it. I'm going to go for Papmat Sarr just because I do think this guy steps up on the big occasions. Yeah. His introduction even to Spurs was in that game against AC Milan where he threw Antonio Conte threw him into that 2-man midfield with Oliver Skip. And as good as Oliver Skip played on the day, I still think Papmat Sarr actually had the better performance. And I think he is a kid that just handles the pressure so well. And, it's sometimes the Champions League, you might get the more unlikely goal scorers. I could see this guy maybe popping up with 1 or 2 on the big occasions, especially at home. He seems to be a guy that really shows up at home in these big nights. So I'm going to go Papmat Sarr for me. In the Champions. And he's one of our, I think, players of the season predictions.
Yeah, without doubt.
Well, he's been involved in nearly every goal this season. You go back to pre-season and the goals he
Pre-season as
scored.
well.
Yeah, pre-season, exactly. He's been involved in nearly every single goal. He's been absolutely instrumental. The only thing I would say is we've seen this from Papa Matsar at the start of seasons in years gone by. We're just waiting for him to sort of kick on and produce it, right throughout the campaign. But it does look like this year could be his breakout campaign. But, quite a few people in the chat have said Johnson, interestingly. He was the Europa League hero last summer. No one's really sort of put a bit of respect on his name. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't put it by him from a Kamakudas to do all the work. And Johnson arriving at the back post, 6 yards out, tap it home. I really wouldn't put it by him, to bag a couple of goals in this run. So to be honest with you, as much as I'm not a big, massive fan of Brennan Johnson, there is every possibility he could step up with big moments for us in the Champions League run. I think it's fair to acknowledge and recognize that.
Maybe it was an easy hit for me to suggest Pop Matasar, actually. Maybe not as controversial as I would have thought or as surprising. Let's take some of these super chats, and then I have one more question on the Champions League for these guys. Dark Sun G saying Kevin De Bruyne facing City and Trent Alexander-Arnold facing Liverpool. It's and also a nice reunion, like he's saying as well. We faced Dyer because he went to Monaco. Come on, you Spurs. I think Billy's saying
there's 4 goals. There's your 4-0, Jack. Eric Dyer sent back from Monaco.
I'm sticking my neck out and saying that we're going to put plenty past Eric Dyer. I do feel like he's had a nice career in terms of moving from massive clubs to massive clubs, and somehow has managed this move to Monaco. So hopefully he's saving up his money. It can be an expensive place to live, but hopefully we can put plenty past him and he can be able to rub his tears in escargot. Billy, you're saying you follow Monaco a little bit, so.
Yeah, and we're also a big name to look out for. Unfortunately, as a Thomas Partey in the Villarreal game, I'm sure they'll get a nice welcome at the White Hart Lane at home.
Yeah, that'd be nice. See if he isn't put in. Yeah, well, see if he definitely will not get a nice reception, but we'll see how it goes for him there. But also, yeah, it is kind of funny. Sometimes what's weird is that I know it's done by an algorithm, Dark Sun G, but it just seems like this algorithm seems to produce, these types of matchups and meetings. Like it's almost automatic that Bayern was going to play PSG. It felt like, I wonder just how true this algorithm is or how fair it actually is.
It's a lot of bollocks. Someone sits there, pairs up the fixtures carefully so that the papers can get their headlines, the sports companies can get their headlines. Just like Dark Sun G there, KDB returns to City. Yeah. Come on. That's not fate. That's not a random draw. That is all put together.
And also, 09 Spurs, appreciate you. Like I said before, and I'll say again, I feel like we knew all of your guys' names in the chat usually, but YouTube has, for some reason, changed it to this whole username nonsense, and we're going to have to relearn them to the best of our abilities. But he's saying, good fixtures for Frank in his first experience in Europe. Soren, do you want to take that one? I mean, Thomas Frank, we have to remind ourselves, this is his first time handling multiple competitions at once, especially of this type of magnitude.
Yeah, exactly. And, this is one thing that's been chucked at Thomas Frank about his inexperience and things like that for this sort of games. But look, we've all, everyone's got to start somewhere, and he's kind of proved that he can adapt. And look, I mean, he did a pretty good job with the team in PSG. You play City, it's only like playing a Champions League game. So I have no worry. The only thing is the rotation of the squad, and if the squad's going to be big enough and deep enough to entertain the Champions League, the Premiership, and the FA Cup and Carabao Cup, and that's where we're going to see whether he can, earn his money or not. But I've got no doubts. I think he'll be all right. And he's tactically aware, so there's no worries there. He'll change everything. He'll look at the games, and I mean, it's not like the argument of he's come from a lower class league or anything. He's managed in the high, the best league in the world probably. So there's going to be no problem with Thomas Frank and leading this team into, as long as we've got the depth and the players to help him.
I'm not yet. That's the big thing, Søren. I'm not sure that Frank is the issue here. Look, I do have question marks about how quickly his backroom staff can turn around tailor-made game plans for oppositions in the Champions League. Like, that's a big unknown. At Brentford, he had a week to work on teams, which worked out in his favor. And so far, we've had a week to work on teams, and it's worked out in our favor. that is a big unknown. Can his staff turn it around for Champions League and Premier League again on the weekend? And how effectively can the squad execute them tactics on midweek and again on the weekend? But in general, I don't really have concerns around Frank. I think, he's smart enough to know how to, navigate these teams and, in games where situations are maybe going a little bit awry. I think he knows how to navigate it in terms of what to do and how to change games and stuff. And I think that's something that maybe at times we lacked last season. I remember a game against Roma. The Roma manager changed it from the bench. Ange Postecoglou sort of failed to react and stuff like that. But where my concern comes in is squad depth, and that's where my concern always comes in. Look, I've always made the argument, Tottenham don't hire bad managers, but everything we do around the manager, we have bad processes in place, bad recruitment, and it ends up making them, look shit. At the end of the day, Pochettino left Tottenham. Look what he went on to do. Nuno left Tottenham. Look what he's gone on to do. Jose left Tottenham. He went on to win a Europa Conference League we got dumped out of. Look what Conte's gone on to do since leaving Tottenham. And, by the end of their tenure, we've made them all look bad. And the reality is they're not bad managers. The problem is the squad depth. When we get into games where you're playing weekend, midweek, they have to rotate. You can't keep putting the same 11 players out on the pitch. And when we rotate, regardless of the tactics, regardless of what you've worked on with these players and asked them to do, our squad depth is just never good enough to carry it out. And that's where then, you get into the accusations like was aimed at previous managers. Well, they're prioritizing this competition over this competition. It's like, that's not the case. They're putting out 11 that they think is good enough for this one, 11 that they think is good enough for this one. It's not their fault. These 11 players are not good enough to come in. And, one thing that Roy Keane says about the Man United team, and a lot of them Man United players, Neville and all, they always give massive credit to the likes of the guys that came in and played backup, that came in and filled in cup games and against lower teams in the Premier League and stuff, because they said we wouldn't have won what we won at the end of the season if these guys couldn't carry the mantle when we needed breaks and stuff like that. And that's where we need to get our squad to, where they are competent. And that's where my big question mark comes in. And that's what I've been screaming all summer long. And I can't give the board any passes. They've had loads of time to do the work. They knew what work they needed to do. It's help Thomas Frank in the transfer market. You got what? 3-4 days left, and we're still throwing darts around with a blindfold on. It's absolutely ridiculous, and that's where I think Thomas Frank will be let down, because it's going to be impossible to try and manage the demands of the Champions League. Plus, if we've got some big Premier League games in, because let's not forget, the next 7 games are favourable for us. After that, that's when we've got the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool, and all that coming in amongst some of these games. How are we going to fare then? And that's the big question, and that's where I don't put it on Thomas Frank, but I actually put it down to squad depth, and that's where my question comes in.
Do you think that they'll look at that draw? Sorry to butt in there. Do you think? I think there's 2 options there. Do you think they'll look at this draw and think, right, we've got a real chance now to go into the next phase, even top 8? Let's go and get some really quality players to see that happens. Or do you think they'll look at that draw and think, well, actually, we could probably muddle through with our current squad and then maybe try reassess in January? Because I hear what you're saying. Either of those 2 things.
I hear what you're saying on that, but if 17th wasn't a wake-up call for them last season to go and get business done, nice and early and improve their squad in terms of squad depth, then I don't think they're going to react off the back of a Champions League draw and go, oh, quick, we better go and sign some quality players. Let's get into the next round. I don't believe it. If 17 wasn't enough to hurry them up, I don't know what is.
The only defence on that one is, let's say we get Simmons, let's say we get Lookman, and maybe some kid or whatever, somebody who's not such a big name.
Ake, maybe, yeah. Well.
Yeah, but the point is then, hopefully you'll have Kulu coming back just after Christmas. So that's another sort of midfielder back. If Richie can stay fit, if Solanke can stay fit, if the team as a whole can stay fit, then we're not too bad. It's the injuries and the unknown that kill us.
Is that not wishful thinking? Because I know a lot of people wanted to put the injuries on Postecoglou last season. We've already got players injured coming into this season. Underneath Antonio Conte, he spent a period where he had academy kids on the bench. He even bemoaned his luck. But no one talks about that. The reality is, my whole lifetime at Tottenham Hotspur, I am used to having 6-7 players not available. And that, for me, is a club issue. Again, and Frank's going to suffer the same. We can sit here and go, well, he doesn't play the gung-ho style, and he doesn't ask them to do this, he doesn't ask them to do that. The reality is, No matter what you ask them to do, the footballers are still asked to get up and down the pitch, still covering in and around the same distance. Injuries are going to happen, especially now when there's extra games that these guys have to play. They're doing postseason tours, longer preseason tours, etc., etc. Your body is going to break down regardless of the workload you're asked to carry. So that's where I have a problem. I think it's just wishful thinking, sitting here going, we're not going to carry injuries this year.
I think there's a difference between saying we're not going to and let's hope we're not going to. And I think that's the one that we're looking at, where we're saying let's hope we don't. I mean, look, we are going to get injuries. We know that. But the big difference, hopefully, this season is they might not all come at the same time. You know, if you're going to get one or two through the season, that's fine. But you just don't want basically your first team all injured at the same time. And hopefully that's not going to happen. But I do find it quite comical that Billy's the one that asks if we are actually going to get some players in before deadline day, knowing how he feels about everything. So
it was a loaded question. It was a loaded question.
Yeah, I kind of thought it was. But look, if we do not, I mean, I know we'll probably move on to it, but at this point, if we do not get some players in before Sunday, whenever at the end of the transfer window is, then somebody should be sitting on a sniper on that hotel and popping a few shots off. And that's even me saying it now. So, you know, that there is absolutely no excuse if we do not sign at least 2 players minimum. It's got to be more than 2 players coming in now before the end of the window. And I don't care if they're on loan or if they're signed permanently, but if we do not get a minimum of 2 decent players plus probably another one, then there's no excuse.
I just, with Thomas Frank, he's already made a pretty clever move in the opening game of the season. He played the 2 younger midfielders with Pop Matasar, then made some rotations in the second half. I just worry that that's something he might have to continue to do throughout this season. And, that's what you don't want to have to see a manager do is, pick certain games to risk, do I go with a slightly weaker lineup for this game, knowing that there might be a tougher game around the corner? Of course, that's why you're a manager. It's why you're paid the big bucks. But you just feel like off the back of winning the Europa League, Champions League money coming through, it's just sort of a situation that you feel like he shouldn't have to be put through. And that's what it looks like it's going to have to be. He's going to have to really strategize, his squad rotation. And just once again, it feels like we're doing that to another manager. And it feels like after the last season we had, why are we doing it once again?
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see on Saturday where the away fixtures fall in terms of the Premier League games as well, because, Bordeaux on paper isn't a winnable fixture, but if it's after Newcastle away or something like that, then suddenly that's a completely different kettle of fish.
Yeah, 100%. Just going to welcome in some other people and also get to some of the other comments here. DB's in the house. Good to see you, DB. Shawnee saying if a few of our youngsters do push on like Sarr, we could really improve from a depth perspective. You hope that they take the trajectory that Sarr has. Shawnee, the Big D, saying, well, that draw was a 9 out of 10 for me. Can it get even better, Big D? Let me know. AK Shags as well, saying big up to Billy T. By the way, everybody, Spurs are absolutely massive, because I can see that people are complaining on Twitter how good of a draw that we were given, but also Billy's absolutely massive because we have close to 3,000 something. I can't even count that high.
3,708
that are watching on Twitter, thanks to Billy. So really appreciate you, sir. And everybody do follow us over to YouTube if you would like to. Close to 300 watching us on YouTube at the minute. Paolo saying, not going to lie, boys, I expect us to ease into the round of 16. If we manage rotations in the league, I expect to win against everyone, bar a PSG or Villarreal draw. I expect a fight versus PSG. He seems to think that Villarreal is the slippery slope.
My one thought on that was when we had the easy Champions League draw, I can't remember who it was. It was like Monaco were in it, I'm pretty sure. It's like Monaco, PSV, and someone else or something like that. And we didn't get through. And then when we had Real Madrid, Dortmund, and Inter, we got through. Or Barcelona, Dortmund, and Inter. So I think sometimes playing the sort of the easier teams is a bit of a. It's not easier games to get up for mentality wise, is it? So
no.
Potential banana skins all over the place for Tottenham as always.
Yeah. Always, yeah. And
Marcus with our history.
Yeah, exactly. At least we didn't get Grimsby Town. That's what I was saying to Soren in the back end. Andrew Spurs saying, let's just hope this draw doesn't make Levy think we don't need anybody. Yeah, that's what Billy was bringing up earlier. I wonder what Levy is thinking once he's seen that draw. He wasn't in the the Champions League room for the draw by the looks of things. Did anyone notice who our representatives were? I kind of paused at the moment that we got them.
Hopefully they're all very busy right now, is what I'm hoping. Hopefully nobody.
Yeah, Johan Lange was maybe stuck, in the loo or something as it was happening.
Hopefully they
Maybe
send the tea lady over for a day out.
Yeah. Andrew Spurs, appreciate the support, man. But yeah, we'll be talking about the players that Thomas Frank should be getting to help this, campaign at least a little bit more for him. Appreciate you, sir. And then Dark Sun G saying we are facing
Joby
Bellingham's brother, Joby Bellingham, and Frankfurt without an Ekitike. What's nice is that even though Frankfurt is a tough place to go, they are significantly weakened after just losing, Marmouche as well as Ekitike. And they are one of those German clubs that aren't necessarily, heavy pushers. They aren't going to really invest a ton of the money that they got in. They'll probably look to bring in new guys that they'll look to develop in the next couple of years to then sell them on for big money again. They've done their recruitment excellently in the last few years, but I'd like to hope that they're maybe a little bit weakened compared to what they were last season. And Mario Götze is only getting older and older and older, which is maybe a good thing for us, Dark Sun G. But final question here, lads, and I guess we were kind of already talking about it, but do we think that Frank has enough already to push, far enough in the Champions League, as well as also managing the Premier League at the same time? Because that's what happens, is that he's going to be expected to finish much higher up in the Premier League than Ange Postecoglou did. But then he's also probably going to be expected to at least make it to the knockout rounds of the Champions League. With the squad that he currently has, do you think he's capable of doing it? Billy, I'll go to you first.
No, I don't, to be honest. And that's not, as Dave was saying earlier, that's not a slight on the manager at all. It's a slight on the depth. We're a couple of injuries away from being in serious trouble again. I think if we sign 2-3 players, then I'd be very, very confident that we could do pretty decent in the league and get through to the next round and maybe even finish in the top 8, because I've been so impressed with the first 3 games under Thomas Frank and everything that he's done so far. So I really, really hope they give him the tools to do it, because if they don't, then it's a real waste of a real good opportunity.
Yeah. I think a lot of people agree. Dave, I know your thoughts on this, but just to make it clear to everybody, is the squad good enough to challenge in both competitions? Because that's why Frank was brought in the first place, right? Was to be able to do both.
Look, I'm just going to go off experience from last season. No, I don't think it is, Jack. You know what? Yeah, we brought in Paulini and Kudus, but we've also lost, Madison and Kulusevski. Like Billy says, a couple of injuries. We're back to where we were last season. So for me, I don't think we've got enough. I do think you're going to see a drop-off in some games, most likely. I think Thomas Frank will look to target and try and win the Champions League games. He'll put his best teams out there, but I think Premier League games, you'll probably see a bit of a drop-off. I'm used to that.
And it was last year? Aston Villa last year, wasn't it? They struggled. Newcastle the year before. It's really difficult to manage unless you're Man City based or Arsenal, deep squads.
And if you're not consistently in it, where you can, sort of go back on experience. Whereas with us, it's been a while since we've been in the Champions League again. And hopefully we get to do it continuously, but we have been teetering in and out of it. So we don't really have a lot of guys that have been there and done that in the past with this current squad. Of course, they tried to balance the Europa League. They couldn't. They had to pick one competition or the other. But this time they are going to have to try to do that as players. Soren, regardless of whether Xavi Simons and other players come in right now with the current squad, do you think it's good enough to be able to balance both competitions?
No. Simple as. I think what we'll probably see is, like it's already been alluded to, that the games where we're not exactly playing Champions League in the middle of them will probably be all right. But when it comes to playing that Wednesday, Saturday type thing, I think we'll struggle, especially if we get 1 or 2 injuries on top of what we've already got. The problem is, you look at that draw and you think we've got to go for the Champions League this year. Maybe not. I'm not talking about winning it, but we've got to do well in it because that draw has favoured us. But we can't afford to finish like we did in the league, because we will be expected to get Champions League again for next year probably, and that means we've got to do well in the league. And you're probably looking at a top 5 finish, because that's where Daniel Levy will want to finish. But if he doesn't give us a couple more players, then we are absolutely knackered. And I think you'll see a little bit like under Ange, where he's having to literally play players left, right, and centre if we don't strengthen it a little bit. But we've got to a point as Tottenham fans where we're kind of used to this, and that's the problem. We shouldn't be used to it. We should be able to go in and yeah, maybe not have the full strength squad in every game, but we should certainly be able to only have to change 1 or 2 players. And with the squad that we've got, we're going to need to do more than that. So it's certainly not good enough at the moment. But look, I've said it all along. I'll wait until the last, until the window's shut, and we'll see where we're at then.
And I think then we'll move on now to the potential signing that could be happening. And we're going to go to Billy on this first, because we will be talking about the potential bomba that has been broken by his arch nemesis, Florian Plettenberg, out in Germany. An agreement between Leipzig and Tottenham is seen as a matter of time, according to the German journalist. He said Red Bull Leipzig demand 70 million euros, including add-ons. No decision for now, though. It's up to Xavi Simons and any potential Chelsea movement. Are you setting yourself up to be blue-balled once again here, Billy? Because it feels like this is similar to the Eze deal, where he probably wants Chelsea, but Spurs are going to have to try to convince him to want Spurs.
Yeah, but listen, I'll go on record and say if he delivers a, it's completely done tweet, then I will forgive all the past, but put it behind us, and I will praise him forever if that happens, because this is such an exciting transfer. I'm trying really hard not to get drawn into it, but it's really difficult, isn't it? Because that's what, we all want the best players to sign for our club, and I think he's an absolutely outstanding player. I'm just really, really worried about the Chelsea of it all, to be honest. And there's loads of good noises coming out. I think Matt Law has just said that, it's really close. The fee shouldn't be a problem. The wages are a problem. Now he's open. It's a bit like PTSD, isn't it? We were in the same position with Eze. We're in the same position with Morgan Gibbs-White. Until it's over the line, this one, I'm not going to get my hopes up fully. But if it does happen, then man, what an exciting signing that would be.
It is kind of similar to the Eze, just as a follow-up to you, Billy, though, because it's like the same terminology.
It's almost exactly the same, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I'm surprised why we're doing it again.
They're using the same buzzwords of, he was originally attracted to the Chelsea project, but now he's being lured away to the Spurs one. It's rinse and repeat, which worries me. I mean, to you, Soren, are you a little bit frustrated that maybe Spurs have been going after these guys that have already said yes to another club, seem intent on going to another club, and then we're trying to convince them to come to us? Is that something that worries you or has frustrated you? It's been the theme of this window.
You know what? I mean, I think I've looked at a few of the sign. I mean, the Morgan Gibbs-White, I think that was just mind-blowing how that didn't happen. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing against the club, more too much crap going on at the other side. Eze, I never believed we were going to get him. I've said it to you a few times now that it just never felt right. It just never felt like he was really ever coming to us. The Simons one, I don't know, I get a little bit of a different vibe. I feel as though it could happen. I don't feel as negative towards it as the Eze deal, for the simple reason he's not a Chelsea fan as such. It's a little bit of a different deal. Yeah, he maybe does prefer Chelsea, but it's not because of loyalties or anything like that. I think it's just, one of those things. But hopefully we can offer him a lot more football. We can offer him the Champions League, same as obviously Chelsea, I know. But if the lad's wanting to play and is young enough, he'll want to play. He knows there's another move after us. So, let's just think positive and hopefully he comes. But I think if it hasn't happened by this time tomorrow, then he's not coming. It's got to happen quick, this one.
Because he's in London.
Yeah, well, this is it. And, I mean, there's the jokes going around that he's staying at Tottenham's new hotel, so he's not far from Chelsea in the morning. But I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if there's a here we go tonight or very early in the morning. If we're going to get him, like I say, the longer this goes on, the less chance there probably is of us getting him.
Yeah. I mean, the best tweet I've seen was, I think it's Tottenham Independent Transfer Story said, Spurs are pushing to sign Chelsea midfielder Xavi Simons, late into the window. Dave, what have you made of that? It's like I was saying to Billy, it's like rinse and repeat with the Eze saga of a guy that clearly has said yes to another club. The other club has been stalling for whatever reason, and then we're just trying to swoop in to convince him. Are you worried once again?
Look, you know me, Jack. how many days over the last week has it been all day? We're getting this guy, and by the time you go to bed, we're not getting this guy. It's been nearly every day this week. Look, when it comes to Xavi Simons, I believe he's already got personal terms agreed with Chelsea, and I think he's just been waiting all summer for them to, put in a bid and take him. Look, I feel like he's obviously moving to London to accelerate a move. I do feel like him speaking to Spurs is trying to maybe accelerate Chelsea in the process of getting a bid in. And I think if Chelsea put that bid in, he's going straight to Chelsea, in my opinion. If Chelsea don't put that bid in, then we will get our man. But look, when it comes to Xavi Simons, I'll be brutally honest, I think fantastic talent. But I wonder, is it a bit like Matisse Tell, where the hype doesn't actually match the reality? I wonder, is it a bit one that where maybe his reputation is being built off being a young baller in FIFA and Football Manager and stuff like that. I'm not saying that there's not talent there, but he doesn't move the needle the way an Eze would have, the way a Morgan Gibbs-White would have, in my opinion. I think it'll take the guy a bit of time to acclimatise to the Premier League, and that's not what we need right now. We need a player that we can drop in and be ready to go. So for me, look, I'm not sitting here, I'm not overly excited, but I'm not going to be overly angry if we don't get it done, because for me, even the likes of Lookman, I mean, yeah, decent player, but not a game changer, not exactly what we need. And this is my fear, the final few days of the market, taking punts, because reality is I do believe Xavi Simons is a punt. I believe Lookman is a punt, whereas the likes of Morgan Gibbs, White, Eze, they were sure teams ready to come in. And for me, I'm just not enamored by it, to be quite honest. I've seen all the group chats, Twitter popping off all day, people sitting there with the dicks in their hand waiting for this one to happen. And for me, I don't get that excitement. I don't get that urge. To be honest with you, I think there's a musical Moulin Rouge and Lion King on this weekend. How do we know he's not in London for that?
How about if we got a Paqueta?
That's more like it. I'd take a Paqueta.
Yeah.
I prefer Paqueta over Xavi Simons. I think Paqueta is ready to go. I think he's a good player in a shit West Ham team.
Do you think you're having a bit of Premier League bias, though, Dave? Because, Ademola Lookman scored a hat-trick, right, in the Europa League final against the undefeated Bayer Leverkusen. Bayer Leverkusen were about to go the whole season undefeated, and then he was the one that dismantled them on the evening. So to say he isn't a big player, he scored a hat-trick.
I'm not saying he's not big. I'm not saying he's a big player, but Johnson scored our win in the Europa League final. Do you rate Johnson?
Yeah, but he didn't score a hat-trick.
Doesn't matter. He still scored the winner. Do you rate Johnson?
Yeah, but I'm saying a hat-trick.
But I've seen players step up before and disappear. Just because he scored a hat-trick, it doesn't make him a great player. It doesn't make him good enough for Tottenham Hotspur. In my opinion, I don't think they move the needle. I think you're bringing them in on top of players that I don't think they're any better. And I don't think they're any worse than them, but I don't think they're any better than them. And I don't think they move the needle. I don't think they're a game changer. Look, we bought We bought Paulinho off the back of a World Cup. How did he do at Tottenham when we bought him? Players can have good competitions and, or have a good period of time, but never show up for the rest of the time. And for me, Ademola Lookman has been a journeyman most of his career. I don't want him.
Well, since it's not really about Ademola Lookman. It's just, maybe a bit of a tangent, but I do feel like he's been easily one of Serie A's best players in the last few years and easily Atalanta's best player in the last few years. My only worry is that Gasperini is one of those managers that tends to, turn sort of, misfit type players into absolute superstars. And then once they move on after, they tend to struggle. At least that's been the case with how good of a manager he's been. But I think Lookman has been the real deal since moving to Serie A. But this is more about Xavi Simons. And let's maybe read aloud some of the stats here for Xavi Simons. Since his move from PSV Eindhoven, where he had a very, very successful time there, he's played 78 games for Leipzig and has managed 43 goals and assists over the course of 2 seasons. His best season there was his first one with the club, where he registered 19 goals and assists in the league over 32 matches played. So more than a goal and assist, per game. And then 4 goals and assists in the Champions League as well over 8 matches played in that year. Do you think he's good enough, though, Dave, to essentially carry this team as a creative midfielder? Because that's really his position. He doesn't technically really play anywhere else other than really in the middle of the park. And is he maybe being brought in to replace someone like a James Maddison? Because he is still only 22 years of age. Like, that's kind of the funny thing. It feels like he's, like you said, been around forever because he was in FIFA at like the age of 12 or whatever it was. So it just feels like, he's someone that everyone's been aware of for a while, but he is still only 22, to my surprise. So is he being brought in to replace like a Maddison or someone?
Yeah, I think he is being brought into playing that sort of number 10 role. Look, I've made no secret about it. You're not going to keep getting away with Papa Matasar turning over the ball. At times you are going to have to turn to that traditional, what you would call playmaker, that number 10. Look, I think Xavi Simons, look, he's got a lovely strike of the ball, don't get me wrong, he can play a little. But is he ready to impact Premier League games and going the way Kudus has come in and impacted games straight away? The way Pelini has come in and impacted games straight away. That's the impact I'm looking for, and that's the impact I've been expecting all summer. I'm not sure. I think it's going to take him a while to find his feet. Physicality in the Premier League is another thing altogether as well. And I'm not sure. I think it'll take him a while to adapt to that as well. He's going to be hit a lot harder than what he has been in the Dutch or in the Dutch league and in the German league. Premier League's a different ball game. It's a different animal altogether. A lot of players struggle when they come to the Premier League. Not everyone can make the step up. And for me, I just think it's one of them where I think, look, for instance, everyone told me I was wrong about Matisse Tal. I was on Last Word on Spurs at the time, and I said, he's not going to be the game changer. I said, Dave, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. He's the guy. Did he change the game for Tottenham Hotspur at all? No, he didn't. And then not only that, we went and signed him. I'm still waiting for him to have an impact. So for me, I just feel it's another level, one of them signings where I think the reputation doesn't match reality. And that's why I'm sticking until proven otherwise.
I don't want to pit you against Dave here. Oh, yes, Soren, you go ahead. But yeah. I was about to pit, someone against Dave here to challenge him because I wonder if there is a bit
I'll take this quickly. Yeah. Sean says, Dave, we frequently disagree, but you are being ridiculous right now. The fact that you think he's a game changer drives me even more into my opinion that he's not going to move the needle, Sean. Even more into it, to be honest with you. No, but look, people may say I'm being ridiculous. I heard it all the time. I heard it last summer. Dave, get behind the window. You're being ridiculous. I said, everybody, it's going to end in a shit show. How did it happen? End in a shit show. But I don't see people like you coming back, Sean, and going, do you know what, Dave? You were right. So don't want to hear it. People could say I'm ridiculous, but 6 months down the line, I end up usually being correct.
Soren, you're going to come in on this. Do you think Dave is showing too much Premier League bias here? Is he engaging too much Graham Souness, terminology?
I think we've got to look at it two ways. Let's just look at it in the sense of if we get Xavi Simons and we got a Paqueta, then you've kind of got your Simons. I mean, the way he plays will suit the Champions League. So what's to say he's, we don't play more in the Champions League and we play a tougher midfield in the Premiership. And then you get, say, that Paqueta player. There's your Premiership, your Premiership player. So, but just think, if we got Xavi Simons, and then you've got Bergvall, and then you've got Papsar, and then you've got Archie Gray, you've got Udogie. Look at the youngsters that are going to come through in a year or two's time. That if them players gel, that is one hell of a bloody squad. I mean, I know it's a big if before we start, but if you get the Xavi Simons now, his roof is it's phenomenal in the sense he's at 21, 22. He's a fantastic player, and in theory, he's only going to get better. And I think he'll be all right in the Premiership. I don't think he'll get bullied too much, and I think he'd be perfect for those Champions League games.
I think, look, don't get me wrong. I think, a year down the line, 2 years down the line, I think that's why we're paying the fee, to be honest with you. I think you might have a player that could fully develop and go on to be a really good player. But right now, what we need this season, ready-made impact, I'm just not sure we're learning our lessons from previous window.
And I agree with you there, but, when we're talking with Xavi Simons, we're not talking about a player that's come up from the Championship or something like that. I mean, I know some people will argue the league maybe isn't as good as the Premiership, but you've got two very experienced players already in Kudus and in Paulinho. If you get the Xavi Simons in and say we got a Paqueta in, you've got three very good first team players in the sense with Kudus, Paulinho and Paqueta. You've got a Xavi Simons that would probably walk into our team anyway. So you can't say the team isn't stronger with those players in. And if we got a Lookman, you're not getting players that have got no experience whatsoever. You are getting players. We look at Bergvall. He came from a league where nobody rated him, and he's done bloody fantastic for a young kid. Now you're getting with Simons and say Lookman, you're getting two players that are a step above those players already. So it's not like we're trying to sign players that nobody's ever heard of, or that have no experience or aren't.
No, I know that, but I heard it Tal. Everyone told me how great Tal was.
Well, I mean, look, I've said it before, and I've said, I'm not going to argue with you, but I think Tell will come good. And a lot of people in Germany really did rate him. A lot of people from Bayern really did rate him.
Yeah, but there's a
And
difference
yes,
between slotting into a Bayern team and getting your minutes and scoring your goals and creating, because
I
you're
know
playing
there
with
is.
much better players. Then coming
but-
into Tottenham. At Tottenham, we're asking them to be that top level guy
Yeah,
from the off. And there's a massive difference. You know, we're not going to give them the time to be able to slot in and find your way in. They're having to come in and change the game straight away. That's the issue.
Isn't it a bit
Yeah,
unfair, though,
and-
to compare Tell and Simmons? Because Tell was, like you're saying, like given very few minutes here and there in an amazing Bayern team, whereas Simmons has come into the Leipzig team, I think was like their record transfer for a player, and then has basically been their best player over the past 2 seasons, when Leipzig, in a sense, have been on the decline. They're not really of the same caliber that they were maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And since he's gone there, he's easily been basically their best player and has contributed with a lot of goals and assists. And the numbers would show that it's almost unfair to compare him and Tell, because he actually has produced, he's produced good numbers, in the
I use Timo Werner, one of Leipzig's best players. Next big thing. How did it work out for him in the Premier League?
There is that saying, isn't there? Never sign a player from Leipzig. There is that.
Benjamin Tesco.
Yeah,
what do you think, Billy?
With Werner, though,
sorry, yeah, go ahead.
He did have a very good career at Leipzig, and then he came to Chelsea, and from that moment it has gone downhill. But it's not necessarily that he couldn't cope with the Premiership in the sense, but even when he went back to Germany, he didn't do it. So something went drastically wrong with that player, and you saw.
Sometimes you can't make the step up. You lose confidence and you can't regain.
Well, I don't think it was he couldn't make the step up. I think the confidence is the thing. He just lost absolutely every little bit of confidence, because you watch some of what he did, and he wasn't a bad player, but he didn't have the confidence to be a good player anymore. That's the thing with him. I think when you're talking about Xavi Simons, you are talking about a totally different type of player. You're talking about somebody who has the intelligence to be a top class player.
I think as well, he scored an absolute banger against England, isn't he? He's like he's a seasoned international at this point for his age, isn't he? And obviously came from the La Masia, played for PSG, a couple of big clubs in there. So I understand Dave's concerns, because I think our biggest detriment in the transfer league over the last few years has been signing players inexperienced, not enough experience. But hopefully this guy is a level above that. But the thing is, you never know until they get here, do you, with the Premier League? But, it's always a tough one.
And Billy, we do have to let you go. So any final words from yourself here?
No, it's been a pleasure as always. Look forward to coming on again next Thursday. And I'm a little bit more up on Lookman than a couple of you guys, though, just because I think his record. I think he's got in 90 games at Atalanta, he's got 40 goals and 20 assists. So I can see that. I'm a bit more excited about that one. But I completely understand Dave's concerns, just because, generally speaking, we're terrible at buying players. That's we have been over the last few years. But if we got those two,
protest this weekend, isn't there, Billy?
Yeah, that certainly is, mate.
Why don't you tell people what's going on this weekend with the protests?
Yeah. So we do have a protest plan for the Bournemouth game. I saw a couple of people mention that in the comments, so thank you very much for that. It's in reaction to the window so far. Check out Change for Spurs on Twitter if you want to know more information. But we'll be gathering at 2:00 because at the moment, at the time of recording this, we've only signed one permanent player that improves the first 11 in Kudus. Signed a loan player in Pellegrini, looks a good signing, but we need more. So that's why we're meeting on Saturday to hopefully get more. And, I think getting Simmons over the line would be a good start for that, hopefully. But thank you, as always, guys. I really appreciate the support. And Dave, Paddy Hartnett said you guys might come over for one of the games. You're very welcome to stay at my house anytime.
Do you live close to the ground?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Oh, do you? Oh, perfect. Yeah. I'll give you a shout, so lad. I'll give you a shout. I didn't know that.
Thanks for anyone of you guys as well.
No,
Paddy, do you know Paddy? Do you know Paddy, Dave? He included you.
Yeah, I know Paddy Hartnett. I know Paddy very well.
Yeah, and anyone.
No, big up, Billy. Really appreciate that. Speak to you again next Thursday, Billy.
See you next Thursday, guys.
See you next Thursday. Appreciate you, Billy. Thanks for coming on. Please, everybody, follow him over on TikTok. Follow him over on Twitter as well, and then also do look out for all of his posts on the protest for change for Spurs, change for Tottenham. Just making sure I don't have any other questions left over on the Simons one. Does the signing reek of panic? Was the last one that I had actually on that. Go back to you on this one, Dave, and then I'll kind of give my opinion on the Simons deal. But do you think this is a one of done out of
Yeah.
panic, not maybe done out of, clever research and that sort of thing?
Um,
Because we're
look, I
getting
would like
desperate,
to-
right? Only so many days left.
I mean, look, I'd like to hope that we've done the research. Look, to be honest with you, on Xavi Simons, there's so much out there about the kid from such a young age. Martin Knightsbridge, a big follower of this channel, he knows Xavi Simons and his family, and since a very young kid. So there's a lot out about there about the talent of this guy and everything else. But if he was one of our first choice targets, then why have we left it so late in the window? And I think what screams a panic for me is that it's widely known he's already agreed personal terms with Chelsea. He's just waiting on them to pull the transfer figure, and then he will leave. The fact that we're putting ourselves into a similar situation when we did with Eze screams of absolute panic. Honestly, I do think Spurs board have looked at the market and go, what signing can we make that potentially could come in and impact the team, but also get a lot of the fans on side behind our transfer window? And I think, prime example, Xavi Simons, I've had a couple of I've questioned whether I think he's the elite level game changer. And, everyone in the comments, saying, Dave, you don't know what you're talking about. So I think if they do sign him, I think maybe it's one that's worked in their favor. But I think what screams a panic is they put us in the exact same situation as we were with Eze. Well, what's to say Chelsea don't offload a player or two and all of a sudden sanction that money and off you go?
I mean, the cynical way to look at it would say panic. The optimistic way would say is like opportunistic, and that they're
Maybe.
seeing Chelsea drag their heels. But regardless,
I
Dave,
would
it's
say
almost kind of the
opportunistic
same
is the
meaning, right?
word.
If you say opportunistic or panic, like they both show that it wasn't necessarily the first target that they were looking at, if you get what I mean.
But I would say opportunistic if Tottenham hierarchy have a history of being opportunistic. They don't, so that's where I don't use that word. That's where I use the word panic, because I've been in these situations with Tottenham in the transfer market before.
Yeah, I kind of think it's a bit of a panic signing, but I actually do rate Xavi Simons. I do think he's in my opinion, been one of the better players in the Bundesliga, to be honest. And that Leipzig team has been pretty awful actually over the past few years, and he's been probably a shining light in that team, and has probably been one of the best players, I think, in the Dutch national team, which also felt like has kind of been on the decline for the past few years. I feel like him and Cody Gakpo, seen him and Cody Gakpo absolutely run rings around teams before, especially in the recent World Cup and in the Euros. I remember they absolutely destroyed the U.S. men's national team, and it was thanks to guys like Cody Gakpo and Xavi Simons. So I think he is a top quality player. It's
at the end of the day, look,
it
I'll
does
give
look
him
like our third or fourth target, to be honest.
At the end of the day, if we get it over the line, part of me is being cynical. I don't think we're going to get it over the line personally. But if we do get it over the line, believe me, I'll give the guy every opportunity to come in and impress me and prove me wrong. It's not like I'm going to be on his case straight away and be like, bah, 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 bah. You see with Dominic Solanke, I wasn't overall with the Dominic Solanke. But last season, I found myself defending the guy a lot, and I gave him every opportunity to sort of prove me wrong. I'll do the same with Xavi Simons. I just think when I'm coming into a market off the back of Europa League win and we want to kick on, and Daniel Levy's made statements like, I want to win the Premier League, I want to win the Champions League. For me, it's got to be players already at a certain level, not that we're waiting on to sort of hit that level. And I think that's what we were looking to try and avoid in this market, but it seems like we're now pivoting to that to a certain degree. But I will give the kid every opportunity. Maybe I've been a bit cynical, maybe I've been a bit harsh, but I do question, is it similar to Matisse Tel, where they've been in video games from such a young age, and that's where the hype comes from?
I think if you watch him in the Bundesliga, he's been easily the best player. That's all I'll just continue to say. If you watch Leipzig, he's by far been their best player, whereas Matisse Tel wasn't really putting in amazing performances at Bayern. He was more living off what you're saying, the video game or FIFA reputation, whereas Simons, in my personal opinion, not as much really, but we have known about him since he was the age of 10 or whatever, since he was pictured with Neymar or something, a long time ago. Same question to you, Soren. I mean, is this opportunistic or is this desperation and panic?
You know what? I don't think it is as in the sense desperation. I think it's one where we've probably had a look, because I mean his name was mentioned earlier on in the window, and what's to say we haven't approached the agent and said, what's the deal? And he said, look, Chelsea are in for him. He's happy. He wants to go to Chelsea. So we've backed off. and now it's looking like maybe Chelsea won't do the deal. I mean, it's changing all the time, I know, but so we've gone back in. I would like to think he was on a short list of players and maybe wasn't the first choice, which seems like Eze or somebody like that was probably first choice, Morgan Gibbs-White, and we've gone back in for him. Is it desperation? Well, it's only desperation if he's not one that we'd already looked and targeted. And it's just, it's just like, right, who's left? We'll go for him then. And I don't personally think that's the case. I think we will have looked at him and we're just now, he's the next one on the list as we're ticking them off. Look at how many times we've said whichever manager we've gone for hasn't been the first choice. We've still gone and got one. Doesn't matter if it's not necessarily first choice, as long as he was a choice that we wanted in the first place. So,
but look how that's worked. All their managers have been sacked off the back of them signings.
Well, yeah, but then like I say, you can say the managers. I mean, people tell us Ange wasn't the first choice. Well, he maybe wasn't, but he won as a European trophy. You could say Conte was the first choice. Well, what did he do for us? So, there are a lot of arguments whether it's first choice or not. The point is, just because somebody's first choice doesn't mean that they are the right person for the club. And
I get what you're saying, but
we've seen that with Eze. He didn't want to come to the club, but he was our first choice, maybe. So it doesn't matter, But the thing is, with Simons, I'll go back to what I said earlier. He might have agreed terms with Chelsea. He might prefer Chelsea, but what's to say if we get into the ground and he looks round and he sees the stadium, he sees the training facilities, goes and looks at Chelsea Stadium, sees their training facilities. Yeah, he's going to a club that have won a lot of things recently, but he will know he's not going to get as much playing time as what he will at Tottenham.
Yeah, but Soren, come on, you're not naive. It's trophies that lures players, not what facilities you have. Let's be brutally honest here.
But the thing is, if you, and I know this sounds very naive, but if you look at what Tottenham are possibly building.
Carrington has a roof in the stadium, or Old Trafford has a hole in the roof, and Carrington hasn't changed since the likes of Neville and all left. They still pull Bruno Fernandes over us. They still pull Mbeumo over us and stuff like that.
Look what
Spurs have 3 more cryo chambers, to be able to fit in, and our hot tubs are
what we going to say?
By 0.3 degrees, warmer. So maybe that's
what we're going to say. Look at our training facilities, but we don't have physios that can keep you fit on the training pitch.
Yeah, but it's an illusion. We've changed a lot of
honestly,
that, though,
we're like the last guy in the nightclub who's drunk, hasn't picked up a bird, and he's scounging around taking anything that's there. That's what we're like now in the transfer market right now.
But the thing is, the players we've been turned down. So let's look at Eze. Eze didn't want to come to Tottenham. If he is an Arsenal fan, what Arsenal fan really wants to come and play for Tottenham? He just played, him and his agent played our club like they'll be sat at Arsenal training ground and laughing about what they've done to us. He was never coming to Tottenham. Morgan Gibbs-White, that was just an absolute balls up, whether it was our side, their side, who gives us monkeys now, it's gone. Simons is a totally different deal. He is not a Chelsea fan. It will all come down to whether he wants to play football and whether he wants to go to a team where, yes, he's going to, all accounts is we've offered him the same wages and the same deal. So it's going to come down to what, does he want to sit on a bench and play occasionally, or does he want to come to a club where he could be a big name in a stadium where a lot of players would like to play, maybe not for our team, but, and the future with these kids, if they all come right, and it will also boil down to what Thomas Frank says to him. So there is every opportunity that Xavi Simons could come and he could be persuaded to come to Tottenham. He has no affiliation.
If Chelsea don't put in a bid, he's coming. If Chelsea put in a bid, he's going to do exactly what Eze done to us.
But we've said that, the thing is, he might not. we were expecting him
But you
to.
can't
because
say in
it's-
one
it's
breath
a-
Eze was never coming because he was always going to go to Arsenal overs. It's reported earlier on, Xavi Simons has already agreed personal terms with Chelsea. He's just waiting for them to put in a bid. He agreed terms with them earlier on in the summer transfer window. He's literally waiting for them to put in a bid. The only reason why we're in for this is because Chelsea haven't put in a bid. But if you look at what they're doing the last couple of days, they're offloading players. They're making room. If Chelsea put in a bid, he will end up signing on a dotted line for Chelsea, and you will be back here Monday night going, he was never coming to us, him and his agent useless, just like you did with Eze.
It's a different scenario with Eze. Eze is an Arsenal fan. Eze wanted to go to Arsenal because it's his boyhood club. Simons is not going to Chelsea because it's his boyhood club. Now, I'm not saying it isn't his first choice, but what I'm saying is he hasn't got affiliations to the club like Eze had. It was a totally different thing with Eze. Now, with Simons, the draw of Chelsea could be the big thing. The thing is with Simons as well is, same as what Eze was in a sense to start with, nobody else has really gone in for him yet. So he hasn't turned other clubs down as far as I'm aware. The only club that has really come in for him is Chelsea. And they've said, whether personal terms have been agreed or not, if they have, fine. The deal isn't done. So if another club comes in and offers him exactly the same, it will all come down to how you sell your club. Now, he may already have his heart set on Chelsea.
Johan going to sell us.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, he might already have his heart set on Chelsea, but that's because nobody else was actually in for him. So you could come in and say, look, mate, we understand you want to go to Chelsea, but this is what we're going to offer. And look, he might have no intention of coming to Tottenham. And yes, maybe on Monday we will say he didn't have, if he comes out and says, yeah, I was always coming to Chelsea, that's fine. But the point is, it's a different discussion with Simons compared to Eze. It's the same scenario in that he's already agreed terms with one club, same as Eze, but he hasn't got that affiliation. It's not a boyhood club. It's not a club that he's played for before. It's not a club that he's supported. It's just a club that he has already spoken to, and there is a big difference.
To use Frank's words, though, Soren, he did say he only wants players that want to play for Spurs. I mean, you can't necessarily make that case for Simons yet.
No, but you can't say he doesn't want to play for Spurs because at the point we weren't in for him. If we'd been in for him all summer and he was still coming out and saying, I want to go to Chelsea, it's a different matter. We've only just approached him according to sources. So if we've only just approached him, so if he turns around now and says, yeah, I want to come to you, let's do the deal. Are we going to sit there and say, well, he didn't want to come to us, really? He's signed for us. So that'll be the difference, that we are in a situation now where we will see if he wants to come to Tottenham, he will sign. If he doesn't want to come to Tottenham, he's not signing, is it? It's as simple as that.
I do feel like Spurs are showing some type of desperation here. I would believe that maybe Simons might have been on the list, but they clearly were after maybe other players before that. They've noticed that this Chelsea deal has been dragging on. They only have so many days left in the window that now they're almost trying to just force a move over the line here. It could be the case that he might have been on the list originally, which I think is a good thing, but it shows that maybe he wasn't necessarily one of the first choices for Spurs, and they maybe felt like Chelsea were just going to get this deal done eventually, and the fact that they haven't, and there's only so many days left, they think that they can sneak in and sort of be able to pry him away and steal him away. So it just seems like it's either a very positive way to look at it, opportunistic, very cynical way to look at it, desperate, and reeks of a panic. I do think it's somewhat of both here by Spurs.
I mean, this is the thing. It might be a case of when, we approach the agent, we approach the player, the agent might turn around and say to him, look, this team really wants you. They're not messing about. They've come in for you. They've put the bid in. They're the ones that want you. Chelsea have messed about a little bit. It could be the total opposite to the Arsenal scenario with Eze. It could be the fact of, he always wanted to go to Arsenal. This one, he could be sat there thinking, well, if they wanted me, they would have come for me by now. We don't know the situation behind the scenes. That's the problem. And for me, you have to, as much as it is looking a mirror image of the Eze deal, you have to take it as a totally different deal to the fact of, we just don't know. And until he either signs or he doesn't, we don't know what his thoughts are. He maybe looks at Tottenham now and thinks, do you know what? that is a team that I could see myself playing in. And I could see myself playing here for a lot of years. You look at the Chelsea team and you think, well, I know I'm good, but look at how many top class players they've got. How much playing time am I going to get? Am I going to be sold in 12 months or 18 months or 2 years' time because they're just turning over? You look at Chelsea, you could think, well, they could be slapped with fines and all sorts soon if they don't meet PSR. I know that might not be a thing players think about, but you just don't know.
I know, but I've heard that, and they keep signing players, and they keep signing.
I know.
So, it's a theory put out there, but in evidence, they're still signing on a dotted line for Chelsea at a much quicker rate than what they are for Tottenham Hotspur.
Final question, I think, Soren.
No, I was going to say, look, we've been here over the last couple of seasons, and we've got no chance because somebody else has gone in for that player, and on occasions we do get them. On occasions we do. It does work out sometimes. I mean, I know it's maybe not the greatest example, but Dragerson, Bayern Munich or Tottenham, came to Tottenham. None of us thought he would come to Tottenham over Bayern Munich, did we? So it can happen. It can happen. Let's have some faith.
I think it is a sign of desperation and maybe a bit of panic from Spurs, but I do rate Xavi Simons. I actually think he's been a quality player in the Bundesliga whenever I've watched him at Leipzig, but it does scream of panic and desperation for Spurs, especially at this point in the window to me. So it can be both. You can be signing a good player, but it also might be done out of a bit of desperation and panic at the same time. Final question, though, lads, is, the whole time we've been linked and rumored with a number 10 or creative midfielder and a left winger. Do we have any faith that Spurs will sign a left winger as well? Will we get both of those signings over the line, or will it just be one of them? And then just as well, which one is more important? I've asked Dave this question before, so maybe I'll get some clarity from you on this. Dave, would you rather us sign a left winger or a creative midfielder? And do you think we can actually sign both with only 3 days left, essentially?
As it stands, I'd rather sign the left winger. I think if you sign that number 10, I think it's very easy to set up against Tottenham. You block the right-hand side in the middle, so you put all your bodies between the middle and the right-hand side and take the gamble that the left ain't really going to be a great source of goals. For me, if you've got two wingers like Nottingham Forest had last season that can just put the ball in the box for the striker, you're constantly going to get goals. And that means also when they set up against you, they have to stretch, the whole pitch and mark both sides. So I think you become a bit more unpredictable with two wingers than what you do with a good number 10 and a right winger. So for me, I do think a left winger is more important personally. Look, I would like us to go and visit someone like Asensio. Well, he's still on the market. He went to Aston Villa last year. I know it was on loan, but there's no reason why he wouldn't come and sign for Tottenham Hotspur. We could provide him Champions League football and stuff like that. I think he'd be a player I'd definitely be interested in. But ideally, my thoughts on it, Jack, we need both. And we need both of players that are already made quality, ready to come in here and drop in and make an impact. That's where I'm at with it. What I don't want is us taking gambles in the window or creating a bigger problem for the next window, because I can guarantee you what will happen. If we take punts and it don't work out, just like Tell didn't, just like Udeberg didn't and stuff, you're getting yourself into a situation where you've got a massive squad and all of a sudden you need to find homes for these guys. You need to get them off the wage bill. You're back to square one where we were when we tried to clear out under Steve Hitchin. So that's why, and hopefully people understand, that's why I'm not sitting here just going, any name that's given to me going, yes, get him in. I just want to fucking sign in. For me, it's got to be one of the right quality that I look at, because like Rain said yesterday, it's not for Christmas. It's usually for 4 or 5 years, which creates a problem. So for me, it's got to be the right player coming in now, a player that I see impacting the team for the next 2-3 seasons at least, not a player that I'm looking at and going, he could impact the team 6 months down the line, a year down the line, 2 years down the line. So for me, we've already made up the market. I think if you knee-jerk and you bring in players that aren't of the desired quality, to be honest with you, I think you're just messing it up even further. I would rather hold off now to January and give Paratici the money to go and spend.
Soren, same question to you. Are we going to sign both? And if we are only going to sign one, which one would you rather prefer?
For me, I think the number 10 is the most important. I think we can get away with the left and the right. I think that creative player is the most important. But I do, like I said earlier, if we don't sign at least 2 decent players now, then I think it's an absolute travesty. And I think it will be that sort of number, that 10 position, and probably sort of more of a left-sided player. But yeah, we've got to get a creative player. We've got to. There's no getting away from that. I think we've got enough to cover left and right. So number 10 for me is the most. If we're only getting one, number 10.
Feels really hard to decide between one or the other, but that's just classic case with Spurs, that we end up getting to this point where it feels like we are probably only going to sign one or the other, and then we leave ourselves a bit short on one side, when in the beginning we were promised by the so-called ITKs and whatnot that Spurs were looking in these areas to deliver on both positions. And then by the end of the window, you're just desperate that they'll just hopefully sign one player in one of those positions. So it's just classic Spurs transfer window in that regard. So that's why I'm frustrated, because I don't really even like having that conversation of should we do one or the other, which one is more important, when in the beginning of the window we all felt like they were both absolute musts.
But I also look at it so far, the way this season has panned out in preseason. I know everyone's sitting there, after the number 10. The reality is Papa Matasar has contributed from there. Yeah. Preseason and so far every goal this season. I'm not being funny. Yeah, Johnson scored. What goals have we actually created off that left-hand side for Richarlison, for someone else? And
Pap Sarr isn't going to play. But Pap Sarr isn't going to play every match. And as good as I think Pap Sarr has been, I don't think he's that player that has that passing in, to break defenses down that.
I understand, but the reality is he's gone a different way about it, and he's affecting games where he is contributing through the middle. My question is, down that left-hand side, what goals have we scored that has been created down that left-hand side this season? Kudos has set up some down the right. We've scored some off what Papa Matasar has been doing down the middle. But Barrett Johnson tapping home a couple. What have we actually created off that left-hand side? You're going to get yourself, you're putting yourself in the same situation you were in last season. We had creativity through the middle. We had creativity down the left-hand side last year. But the right-hand side, we produced nothing. And all we've done with Brennan Johnson is move that problem from the right to the left. And we haven't fixed it. And that's my point. Papa Matasar is contributing, and he will contribute throughout the season.
Yeah.
Brennan Johnson scored goals, but when you're looking for a guy to cross balls in, create from down that side, so we're not so one-dimensional, we don't have it. And that's why I think the left wing right now is much more important than the number 10. I get Papa Matasar isn't your traditional player that gets on the ball and creates, but he has gone another way about getting up behind the ball, turning it over, using his pace, his power, his strength. And we say he doesn't have that final ball. When he turned that ball over against Burnley, he played a lovely ball into Johnson's path for him to tap home. So, my point is, although we don't have the traditional number 10 everyone's looking for, we have a guy that is making it work and contributing. And that's why I don't think we should knee-jerk and get another number 10 over a left winger.
I think Jurgen Klopp was, Thomas Frank was given a line that Jurgen Klopp once said, where he said turnovers in dangerous areas are actually the best form of creativity. You don't always need a number 10 as long as you can turn the ball over in dangerous areas. And that's what Pap Matasar is essentially doing for us right now without being a Madison type player.
Yeah, but the thing is, again, if you're playing teams that are playing the low block, and that are defending against us for argument's sake and work, you need that player that has that insight to a little pass here, a little pass there, a think over the top. Now, look, Pap Matasar, I've said from the very, very beginning that this lad will be a big player for us. I've said it all along. And I don't think he's the player to be our creative midfielder for the whole season. That's the only thing. Yes, I think playing him alongside somebody else, he's going to have a fantastic season. But he is not the one that is going to break down teams for us this season. And I just think he's that player that will have his games, and he'll have some great games, but he's still got that little bit of rashness in him. He's still got that youthful side to him, and he's still learning his game. I just think we need a player that is intricate, that sees these little passes, and that will create something out of nothing. And I don't think Pap Sarr is that player for the whole season.
I get what you're saying, right? But we had Madison and Kulu for large parts of last season. We struggled to play against teams that had low block against us, and we had plethora of number 10s. At times, we played 2 number 10s. The problem against low block teams is they set up in the middle. They block up the middle, around the area, everything else, stop you from playing. Where they allow you your space is either in front of them when they have everyone behind the ball or out wide. And our big problem last year is we didn't have the wingers to get on the ball, take their man out, and deliver a quality cross for someone to get into. And that's where them games are won, by getting putting that ball in the box and actually making that backline defend. You put a number 10 in a situation against a low block team where they've got their strikers, midfielders, and defenders behind the ball. You're asking that number 10 all of a sudden, because it's going to happen, he's going to have to drop deeper to get the ball. And you're asking him to basically play through 11 guys. Against low block teams, you get the ball out to your winger, you ask him to skin one guy and put in a brilliant delivery. Last year, out wide was a massive problem for Tottenham Hotspur. And for me, you don't fix it, I think we'll come up short in terms of from open play a hell of a lot of times. The only difference is this year, we have the set piece avenue. We're going to be lethal from set pieces, which will help us, put extra points on the board. But the reality is, against low blocks, we've had number 10s and they struggled. The reason why they struggled is because they were getting on the ball and they were constantly looking sideways because there was no space for them to play into. But when the ball went out wide, it came back and they were looking for number 10 to produce the magic. The reality is, in them games, you need your wingers to be sharp and to create a bit of distance, put the ball in the box and go and get Richarlison, Solanke. And this is where you can be clever. Get the ball out wide. You tell Papa Matasar, get in the box with Richarlison. Go in and attack the ball with Richarlison, and you get them at them that way. Sitting there trying to break them down with just a number 10 alone, you're asking for trouble.
But we're not talking about just having a number 10 alone. I mean, if you're playing with that 3 in midfield, you're going to play Paulinho as your number 6 for argument's sake. Well, then you play a Papsar and a number 10. Because, I mean, Papsar isn't a number 10. To me, he's that, that sort of, probably a number 8 in a sense that
I agree.
He's backwards, he's forwards, and in a sense, to me, I mean, can you imagine a Modric in our team now? That little player that just does things, and even Madders on. When Madders is playing on his game and he is on it, him and Papsar together would be absolutely fantastic with Paulinho sat behind him, and I just think. As much as I agree with you on the left, another Kudos in a sense on the left, but maybe a slightly different type player. But that sort of level.
Here's my thing, though, Soren. Everyone said last year. Here's my thing. Everyone said last year we were too predictable and too easy to play against. The reason why is because everything we tried to produce was down the left, and Johnson was coming in off the right, tapping home. Very easy to read against, and we had number 10s. So we had the number 10s and the left hand side. You bring in another number 10, you're going to have the number 10 on the right-hand side, and all you've done is shift the problem. It's all you've done. It's a massive issue. The reality is, yes, Brennan Johnson could tap home balls, but we will become very predictable and very easy to read again if you don't solve that problem.
And like I say, I do agree with you, and that's why I'm kind of saying, to me, we've got to sign both. But I still think an actual number 10 is more important to us now. Because we've got, I mean, if you look at it, we've kind of got 3 different players. You've got Tell, you've got Odegaard, and you've got Johnson that can play. I mean, if things needed to be changed, you've got Richie that could play down the left as well. So you've got 4 players that are all pretty different.
Yeah, but what are they
now, I know they're not the same level as a Kudos, but the thing is, you could play them down the left. So to me, if you look at the creative side, we haven't got 4 players in that team that are creative for the centre.
No, I get what you're saying, but I mean, I could play down the left-hand side. A body isn't what we need. We need someone that's actually producing. You know what I mean? That's the thing. We need someone that's actually going to produce. Odegaard, Barry's couple of goals against AZ Alkmaar. A lot of puffing and puffing, but no quality. Same with Matisse Tell. Brennan Johnson taps home balls, but outside of that, he doesn't create anything for anybody else. So it's one thing having bodies, but it's another thing actually having productivity.
But Dave, with that argument, you could say under Frank, we're going to rely on our strikers more to score the goals than our wingers. And
no, I know that, but you still need the wingers to supply the strikers.
Yeah, I know you do. But this is what I'm saying. So therefore, where you're sort of saying, you know, you need that player to come in and tap in the goals. Yes, I agree with you. But if Odebear can put a pass in, if Tell can start putting a pass in, if Richie plays out there, then he can.
Yeah,
put
but
a
I'm
pass
just
in.
going off what I've seen, though. I'm not going off what ifs. I'm going off what I've
Yeah,
actually seen, and they've proven they
But
can.
the point is, you've got 4 players in a sense that can play that left-hand side, but you've got nobody in the centre that you would call a number 10 in our team at the moment. So if you've got 4 players on the left and you've got none in the centre, surely the none in the centre is the priority.
I think at the end of the day, we're all still agreeing that we need both. And I think even to Soren's point, I think what Soren is really trying to hone down on is that at the moment, we only have Pop Matsar who can realistically play there right now, at this moment and stage in the number 10. So how long can we really get away with that? You know, we do probably need someone else that can theoretically play there. But I think Dave was also selling himself a bit short. I think you're not just a body on the left wing. I think you could probably do a job out there. Yazuaki, appreciate you, sir, becoming a Flat Cap member. Thanks for joining the clan, and also as well, take advantage of members' previews to any of the bit of content that comes out exclusively for the members. And thanks for supporting the channel. I think that was kind of the last question that we had, you know, for everyone this evening. Thank you, Soren, for being with us. Of course, thanks to Billy T from earlier. And yeah, Dave.
Just quickly, Chelsea have submitted the first bid to Barcelona for Fermin Lopez worth 50 million plus add-ons, which means if they're going for him, they might not end up taking up the option to sign Xavi Simons after all. So, one to keep an eye on.
Yeah,
or maybe
I think that was
we've already
the case.
signed
And then Garnacho
coming to Tottenham.
They've also spent a lot of money, I think, on Garnacho as well. I think they just got the here we go for that
here's
one.
What, Ben, just so we can all leave it on what the latest. Ben Jacobs. Tottenham have held advanced talks with Leipzig over a move for Xavi Simons. Spurs prepared to pay around 70 million. Personal terms with Simons being worked on and not far off. Simons has already agreed terms with Chelsea and has wanted to move to Stamford Bridge all summer, but there is a no club-to-club agreement yet. Chelsea now have to move fast, with Spurs pushing for a quick agreement. Spurs cautious in case Chelsea counter, but an agreement between Spurs and Leipzig and Spurs and Simons is close. So basically, as long as Chelsea don't put in a bid, looks like Xavi Simons will end up a Tottenham player.
The only worry is, you know, Spurs might
or
take
does he drag it out to deadline day?
Well, also, he is in London, but knowing how Spurs operate might take him 2 full business days just to get over to North London.
The problem is there's a lot to do in London, so he can occupy himself and give Chelsea time. That's the issue. Like
he's probably staying in West London.
But that's the thing. If we sent him out, if our club was in the middle of Timbuktu where there was nothing to do, he would sign on the dotted line because there's nothing for him to do. But he can occupy himself in London with plenty of things and just delay it until transfer deadline day. I'm hoping Spurs are smart here and go, we're not waiting to deadline day. We need a quick decision, basically. But look, that's the latest. That's where it's going to leave off this evening. Let's wait and see what happens. Sorry.
Let's not worry, because according to some people on Twitter, Chelsea's in the south of London, so if he's looking around the south, he ain't going to find them, is he?
He's probably staying in Kensington, but let's hope he's staying in like the Silver Cloud up in North London instead. Yeah. Everybody,
maybe Chelsea have gone in for the Barca lad because they know they're not getting him. Maybe he is coming to Tottenham. Maybe he has chosen Tottenham.
Everybody, appreciate all your support. Thanks again for Soren here for joining us, making these shows possible, especially over the summer. He's been here frequently, so do thank him for also contributing to some good chat and conversation. Thanks to Billy T from earlier, and we'll see you all. Dave will be, running the show this weekend. I'm going to be attending a wedding, so everybody give Dave all the support on all the various things that he has to handle and take care of when it comes to the match day weekend.
Predicted lineup is out in the morning, guys. I've already got that recorded, edited, and everything else. I think it's one of my best work yet. So make sure you get on that. Then, to be honest with you, I'll wait and see what happens with the Xavi Simons thing. If there's any major update or progress, I'm sure I'll go live. If not, you'll catch me over on Last Word on Spurs tomorrow evening. And then back here for your pre-match build-up and your watch-along. Last one before the transfer window. Let's hopefully we get the win. And Jack, you go and enjoy your weekend, my man. Well-deserved, buddy.
I'll try my best. There's some things I'm not looking forward to it on. I have to pretend to learn how to do a flash mob dance, which I thought was dead and gone, 10, 15 years ago. And it's a bit of homework that I thought I wouldn't have to be assigned at my age. But, beggars can't be choosers, and going to enjoy it nonetheless. But appreciate you all. And
we need a video on that.
Need enough.
We do.
All phones need to be thrown in the bin before that goes in. But But everybody, appreciate you all, and see you this weekend, and hopefully another win for Thomas Frank in the bag, and maybe another clean sheet. See you next time, everybody, and potentially get ready for some Xavi Simons news.
Come on, you Spurs.